Sports 101, the sports show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's and brings knowledge to the game. Here at Sport 101, we like to expand our conversation to include the history, past, present, as well as in the making of sport. We also look at sport from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago shows. You can follow us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram, search at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk and podcast app, the only Black-owned in the country. You can watch and listen to my show as well as many other shows. Keep up with breaking sports news. And if you miss a show, you can listen to a podcast or watch the video via YouTube channel. Search Sports Zone Chicago. But more importantly, we need everyone to download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now I would like to discuss this week's episode entitled African American Women NCAA Basketball Coaches. When we look at collegiate sports, everyone talks about the SEC, in particular with football. And the SEC is the premier collegiate football conference as of right now. Since its inception in 1932, the SEC has only had 5 head coaches of African descent. The first was Sylvester Croom from Mississippi State in 2004. Next, you had Joker Phillips at Kentucky in 2010. You also had, in 2010, James Franklin at Vanderbilt, who's now currently the head coach at Penn State. Shout out to Terry Smith and young A.M. Butler on his first offer. Congratulations on that. You have Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M in 2012 and Derek Mason at Vanderbilt in 2014. When you look at these numbers, they're almost the exact opposite in SEC women's basketball. In the 14-team SEC, what you can see here, there's a gender breakdown of NCAA Division I head coaches from 2007 to 2008, all the way up to the current year. If you can look at the numbers, you can see female, in particularly, head coaches are starting to rise. This happened recently because after Title IX, most of the coaches started to become male, and we'll go over that a little later. So the SEC is a 14-team basketball league, and Black women hold 7 of the head coaching jobs in the SEC. So let's talk about this for a second. That's 50% of the head coaches in women's basketball in the Southeastern Conference are African-American women. That's astonishing. You have Dawn Staley at South Carolina. Dawn Staley is the premier coach of the conference. She has won a national championship for South Carolina. Here's another picture of her in our U.S. Olympic coaching stints. Next, you have Johnny Taylor. She's the head coach at the University of Georgia. She is, you would say, Dawn Staley's toughest foe, per se. They just played each other in the SEC tournament championship with Dawn Staley's team coming out on top. Next, you have Nikki Fargas at LSU. She's another African-American woman head coach in the SEC. Kyra Elzy at Kentucky. Nikki McCray at Mississippi State. Yolette McPhee-McCune at Ole Miss. And last but not least, Terry Williams at the Auburn University. Now, this type of diversity other Power 5 conference in women's basketball. So the SEC is leaps and beyonds ahead of any Power 5 conference in basketball with this 50% rate. There are 3 Black female head coaches in the 15-team ACC, 0 in the Big 12, 1 of 14 in the Big 10, and 2 of 12 in the Pac 12. When we look at the NCAA database in 2020, only 14% of Power 5 women's basketball head coaches were Black women, compared with 52% white women and 29% white men. Black women basketball players made up 49% of the Power 5, compared with 24% of white women and 28% other. So basically, and this is some sentiments that Coach Staley and other people have echoed throughout the years, not only in women's basketball, but all sports, that if you're almost 50%, in some sports over 50% of the participation, but yet you're shut out of the management and coaching ranks. So that's been an issue in all sports, and we're trying to get that proverbial glass ceiling broken down. In 2018 and 19, 214 of 351 Division I head coaches in women's college basketball, or 61%, were women. That number and percentage has been on the rise since 2015 and 16, when 196 female head coaches were the fewest in 12 years. That seems significant, that women have been the majority of head coaches in all 12 seasons, comprising 56% in 2015 and 16. But there's reasons for this increase. Again, if you can show the gender chart again, Greg. Greg Robbins has came on to the money team now. The Jedi Sensei Maya Kai has brought him on. So I'd like to welcome Greg Robbins to the Sports 101 and SportsZone Chicago family. Say hello to the people, Greg. You got the picture up.
How's it going, guys? Welcome again.
All right. So again, this is Greg Robbins from Chicago. He's with us now. So any ideas or things you have, please make sure you can contact Greg. Can you let him know where you can find him? People can find that on social media, Greg.
You can contact me at Rob G70's Kid on Instagram, or you can reach me at Greg Robbins on Facebook, or grobbins04@gmail.
All right, thank you so much. So if you could pull that gender chart up again, Greg, for me, please. All right, so when we look at the gender chart, why are women getting more head jobs? Again, when we go back to it, after Title IX, women's sports was kind of looked like a business like every other sport. So a lot of the companies brought in white males to be head coaches, as they thought they can get better sponsorships. They were just mimicking what the other sports were doing. So as you can see, as it gets closer to the modern times, you see those numbers start to increase in the blue, almost getting towards 70%. So why is that? One reason is when we look at culture, and oftentimes this is not discussed. You can take the picture down, Greg. Thank you. Oftentimes this is not women's sports, or it's looked at kind of as taboo, but the LGBT community's involvement in women's sports, and particularly basketball, it's here, so we must talk about it. There's been a strong push from that community as they do advocate for women's rights to get more women head coaches, as they felt that they would support and understand any players that were in the LGBT community that played collegiate basketball. Also, other women begin to advocate for women's head coaches, and particularly other women head coaches, and the athletes begin to voice what they wanted as well too. Notre Dame's Muffet McGraw, who was known for her sound bites in 2019, said people are hiring too many men. And I think this statement speaks on so many different levels, because we've done a show previously about LAFC, that's now defunct, in Major League Soccer, who got frowned upon for saying it was too Hispanic. We've talked about the historically Black colleges and universities who sometimes their staffs, or I'm not going to say watered down, but or diversified in the hopes of just being politically correct, versus when you go to the predominant schools, it's the opposite. So that's always funny when people say things like that, because that means they understand it, but yet they're not doing anything about it. So again, as we were talking earlier, prior to Title IX, women dominated the coaching of women's sports in colleges and universities. But what happened? Remember, Title IX fought for the inclusion of all women's collegiate sports. They have the same level of compensation, i.e., scholarships, apparel, everything's the same as the men. So with these increased revenue streams from television, again, women's sports became like the men game for profit. So they brought in these so-called corporate managers, i.e., the European male, to be head coaches. When before Title IX, almost 90% or almost 100% of the women's coaches were women. Programs begin to bring in men's coaches also to toughen up teams. A lot of people don't realize that most women's collegiate basketball teams, in particular, the top teams, they always scrimmage against the men's intramural team or just men's practice players, as it wants to get their players tougher. A lot of women, after playing against men their whole lives, also found it more acceptable to be coached by a man. A lot of women athletes also stated that, they wouldn't respect the woman coach, but they can respect the man coach. So there's a dichotomy in the athletes in regards to some are wanting women, some are wanting men. So these were some of the issues that were going on in women's sports. So why does the SEC have so many black women as head coaches? When you look at the SEC and every other sport, they're very slow to hire people of African descent. Research has shown that having a black coach can change how connected black players feel to a team. This is from Rachel Roberson. She's a Cal Berkeley graduate student, and she's completing her dissertation or her doctoral research on gender equity in collegiate athletics. She's also been quoted as saying the presence of having a black female basketball coach really mattered in their perception of how they were going to be treated on the team, if they're going to feel at home in a higher education setting where outside of the basketball arena, most people on campus don't look like them. Similar to the men's game, basketball players in the SEC dictate who they want to coach. So when you look at basketball throughout the collegiate landscape, it's more blue blood per se than football, where the players are dictating who they want to coach, versus in football is the older money and the boosters who dictate who they want to coach. If you look at the situation at the University of Texas right now, a lot of the black players, as well as the whole team at the University of Texas, rebelled last year, except one, the quarterback, Sam Ellinger, in standing after the game for the Eyes of Texas song that has some racist connotations from its inception of when it was written, and the Eyes of Texas being a synonym for the Eyes of the South. So the whole team walked away from that, if you're not familiar with that incident. And now Texas boosters are in an uproar saying they'll take their money. If they don't want to play for Texas, go to another state. This is what we do. Versus in basketball, the players are dictating, who they want to coach. So when you look at the SEC, similar to football, it's predominantly people of African descent and men's and women's basketball. And these women are dictating, these black women are dictating who they want to be coached by. And again, with Dawn Staley's success, just like in football, the zone read is permeated not only collegiate, but the NFL level. So you see an influx of African-American quarterbacks, where before the zone read was looked at as, inferior. If you have to do that, you're not as good, you're less than. With Lamar Jackson winning MVP, hopefully those comments will change. So when we look at this year's SEC championship, again, this year's SEC women's tournament final was between the number 2 seed South Carolina and number 4 seed Georgia. And this was the first time that 2 black head coaches met in a conference championship game. So these women are just trailblazers and making events and, history, pretty much everything they do. The Gamecocks head coach, again, Dawn Staley, she'll be going for her 6th SEC tournament title. as she has won the SEC in 2015, 16, and 17, as well as 18 and 20. Georgia's Joni Taylor was going for her first SEC title. It'll be the fifth for the Bulldogs altogether, with the previous four coming under Coach Andy Landers. Taylor was named 2021 SEC Coach of the Year Tuesday, this past week. So that goes to show you the thing she's done at the University of Georgia. This also will be the first time first women's conference tournament final between Black coaches in any sort of any current Power 5 conference. So that's men or women that this conference championship game is being played, and both coaches are of African descent. The ACC women's tournament dates back to 1978, the SEC to 1980, the Big Ten to 1995, the Big 12 to 97, and the Pac-12, who was previously the Pac-10, in 2002. So all these years is the first time two people of African descent are meeting in the championship of any sport, of any Power 5. So that's amazing. Along with Staley, other Black head coaches who have won Women's League tournament championships among the current Power 5 coaches are Carolyn Peck, who won in 1998 and 99 with Purdue, and Cynthia Cooper Dyke, who won the Pac-12 in 2004 with Southern California. So I just want to give you guys a quick bit of info, as we always do on Sports 101. Cynthia Cooper Dyke, more commonly known as Cynthia Cooper, was an amazing collegiate professional basketball player. So just as people are talking about Deion Sanders and how he came to the SWAC and is revitalizing it, Cynthia Cooper was a SWAC head coach at Prairie View and Texas Southern. If you look at this picture right here, you'll see her in her Texas Southern apparel after winning a game. So again, this has been done before on the women's side. It's just no one's putting any media information to it. Cynthia Cooper, again, is a WNBA All-Star, multiple Olympic time gold medalist, and a former HBCU head coach. Again, you see her at her stint at Texas Southern University. So again, this was happening, and it's been happening for so long. Again, my current head coach now, Sean Gilbert at Livingstone College, was a number 3 pick in the NFL draft when he came out, and he had a long collegiate career. So again, there's a lot of pros that are doing this and not getting a notoriety. So we must look at this picture holistically. Congrats to Deion and Jackson State. Big ups. Keep doing what you guys do. Kansas coach Marion Washington won the Big Big 8 Women's Tournament champion 6 times between 1979 and 1993, before the league merged with the Southwest Conference to form the Big 12 before the 1996 season. And we can't talk about women's collegiate coaching if we don't mention C. Vivian Stringer. I know Maya will pop in and get me. Coach Stringer used to be the head coach of the Hawkeyes, IOWA, as well as some historically Black colleges and universities. And in 2007, she won the Big East tournament when she was at Rutgers, when this league was considered one of the major conferences. I don't know if you guys remember, but that year, the team was in the news for a lot of things outside of basketball. When Dawn Imus made the comment on the nature of Black women's hair while competing in sport. Now, hair is an issue for women, and sometimes it can be a deciding factor in where women athletes attend school. Dawn Imus's comment was very antiquated and ignorant, and had no place being said about Black women in general. So that was very offensive. But getting back to what we were talking about in regards to hair, that can have a woman decide whether to go to a certain school or not. I remember when I was at University of Iowa, we had a event, and Charlotte Westerhouse came back. She works at the NCAA headquarters in Indianapolis, or she used to, and she ran track at Iowa in the 80s. And she used to tell stories that she was so happy when someone moved to Iowa City that can braid hair, because before then she can get her hair done before she came to school on break, and if she got a ride to Chicago. But other than that, she really couldn't get it done. So she was just excited and being able to enjoy that. So we got to think about the holistic outcomes of all student athletes, in particular African American women, and what they're going to face on these campuses. That's why a lot of people now are advocating for these women, just like the male athletes that go to historically black colleges and universities. And there's been a few to do that, and particularly at Jackson State University, where there was a few young ladies who were top prep players in the state of Mississippi. They decided to attend Jackson State just to make HBCU women's basketball better. So I would like to give a big shout out to them. Stringer and Naismith in Washington, who retired in 2004, are two of the most successful black coaches in collegiate hoops history. Stringer's in the Naismith Hall of Fame, and both she and Washington are in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. So again, shout outs and blessings to C. Vivian Stringer and Coach Washington. Now let's talk about this year's Final Four. The NCAA Women's Final Four will have two black coaches for the first time, in South Carolina's Dawn Staley and Arizona's Adia Barnes. If you look at these pictures right here, you'll see Coach Staley again, and also Adia Barnes, who's the head coach for the University of Arizona Lady Wildcats. So again, this is Coach Staley right here, and the next picture you'll see will be of Adia Barnes. That's Adia right there after cutting down the nets, going to the Final Four. There's so many black coaches out there that don't get opportunities, Staley said, because when ADs don't see it, they just don't see it. And they're not going to see it on the biggest, and they're going to see it on the biggest stage Friday night. So again, Coach Staley is pumped up. She's not playing Arizona, but she still is ecstatic that there are two black women coaching in the Final Four. Also, Staley and Barnes are the only former WNBA players who have taken a team to the women's Final Four. So that's another bit of history that these two had great, successful WNBA careers, transition over to the coaching side, and are doing exceptionally well in taking their teams to the Final Four. Staley, who was 50 years old, began her coaching career at Temple in 2000 when she was still playing for the, she was still playing in the WNBA. And then she moved to South Carolina around 2008 and 2009. She previously led the Gamecocks to the Final Four in 2015 and 17, winning the latter for the program's first national championship. So in 2017, the University of South Carolina women won the NCAA national championship, and that was the first one for the Lady Gamecocks. Coach Barnes is in her fifth season at Arizona. She talked Monday about her team's Elite Eight win over Indiana, about her admiration for Staley, how she's looked up to her throughout her playing career, and just how she really respected her. There's three other black women who have coached in the women's Final Four. Again, C. Vivian Stringer took three teams there. She took Cheney University, that's a HBCU in Eastern Pennsylvania, in 1982. She took the Hawkeyes in 1993, and she took Rutgers in 2000. And obviously in 2007, we talked about their run and the Don Imus situation that went viral. Carolyn Peck was the first black woman to win an NCAA championship with Purdue in 1999. And Pookie Chapman, she also went with LSU in 2005 and 2006. Now, a quick sidebar about Pookie Chapman. She was fired from at LSU due to an inappropriate relationship she had. Basically, she was dating her star player, Simone Augustus. And it was funny, after they fired Pookie Chapman, they brought in an older a white man to be the head coach. Obviously, they have changed again and pivoted to copycat again with South Carolina, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Kentucky, All these other teams are doing with black women head coaches, but they kind of moved away from it, and that was some of the things they were trying to take shots at in regards to women's basketball. But when you look at it, how many professional men's college coaches have done things? If you look at the incident at Arkansas, where the coach was on a motorcycle with a recruiting student and it wrecked, and he told him to walk 200 yards up and call the police. So this happens on both men's and women's sides. So it's not fair to single out Coach Chapman when the men are doing it and no one's talking about it. So we must look at that. Two black men have also taken teams to the women's Final Four. Winthrop McGriff, he took Cheney. Again, he was a coach there before Coach Stringer in 1984. And Quentin Hillsman with Syracuse in 2016. Coach Staley has been quoted recently as saying representation matters. Nothing against anybody else that lost to us, but when you see two black women representing in this way, I hope the decision makers notice, because there's a lot of jobs out there. Staley also spoke on inequities at this year's tournament. If you can show this video, Greg, it addresses the locker room and weight room situations that have been going on at the tournament in Indiana, and again, the disparity between the men and women. So please check this video out, everyone.
And yeah, it is March Madness, which of course is a very happy time, but unfortunately over the past several days, women's basketball players have shared images and videos of the favoritism that's been shown to the men's basketball players in the bubble. This includes a ridiculously bigger weight room for the men compared to the women's weight room, which, as the video shows, looks no bigger than the dining room in a one-bedroom apartment. Don Staley, who's never been shy to speak on behalf of women's basketball, addressed the mistreatment earlier today. Take a listen.
Players are talking more. Players are seeing more. Players are more woke about, what women aren't getting. And then you add insult to injury, and you have, guys out there just saying some, disgusting things about, we're not making money. We're the JV in the school. That ain't cool. That ain't cool, because that's what happens in boardrooms, where there's a miscommunication with at the highest level of the NCAA. Either it's miscommunication, no communication, or just not downright caring if people know what's happening on our side of things. And that must stop. That must stop, because we're under the umbrella of March Madness. If the NCAA owns March Madness and all of, is luxury, then it should feel luxurious to every student athlete.
The thing for me is just the excuses that have been made. I've heard a lot of excuses from big people. So I really don't agree with that. But this is just an example of things that have been going on, and it's been going on unnoticed. And we're finally taking a stand, and I think things are going to get better. But this is something that's been going on. It's very frustrating, but I think it's a good thing to see that the men, the boys that are stepping up for us, some players that are in the NCAA tournament on the men's side are stepping up, reposting and doing those things. So it definitely shows a big role from them to see that they're on our side about this.
Again, and thank you so much, Greg, for sharing that video with us. The video basically details, if you look at the beginning, that one rack was the entire women's weight room, where across the curtain you saw a whole ballroom as a weight room for the men. There was also inadequacies in the food as well as the gift bags that they got. If you looked at the pictures on the bed, you saw the men's gift bag versus the women's gift bag. So again, this is archaic behavior and definitely needs to stop as our black women begin to increase their roles in sport. Hopefully their voices will be heard as they are being heard in regards to the political unrest. Before we close, I would like to touch on that for a moment. When we look at the political landscape of this current the current times, and particularly this past year, you see a lot of athletes speaking out, but these women athletes are more vocal and I guess more they're representing the cause on a higher level than the men. Many say the men are on financial leases from their organizations, as you know, they don't want to get fired and lose their endorsements. Where a lot of these women athletes don't have the endorsements, as you can see the dichotomy in men's and women's sports from the NCAA. So they don't have much to lose, so they're speaking out more. So we have to take that into consideration too, with Coach Staley and her counterparts, as well as her student athletes, are speaking out for the advocacy of people of African descent in this country. On Friday, if you want to see Coach Staley in action, South Carolina will face Stanford, and Arizona is going to meet UConn in the Final Four. So check out both games for these women head coaches. We're about to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll kind of introduce these SEC coaches and let you learn a little bit like them. So again, thank you for tuning in Sports 101 with Jamar Harp. We'll see you after the break.
You see me.
You hear me.
Respect me.
Respect. Due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others.
We don't have to agree, but I deserve to be heard. I stand my ground. Respect me.
We don't have to be friends, but I deserve your civility. I stand my ground. Respect me.
You don't have to understand my culture, but I deserve to be authentically myself. I stand my ground. Respect me.
I stand in defiance of your need to make me less in order for you to feel adequate.
I stand.
I stand aware that the America that you see and love today is a result of my free labor.
I stand.
I stand knowing that the contempt you have for me was not instigated by me, but perpetuated by the fear you have of me.
I stand.
I stand surviving your many attempts to emasculate me. Indeed, I thrive despite it.
I stand realizing that you take many things from me, but I will not allow you to take my respect.
I am a man.
I am a proud man.
I am a proud black man.
I am authentically, undisputedly, unapologetically a proud black man.
I am authentic, undisputedly, unapologetically a proud black man.
I am authentically, undisputably, unapologetically a proud black man.
Respect me.
I have done more than enough to deserve it, and still you withhold it.
The bill is past due.
You owe me.
Respect me.
Respect me.
Respect me.
Welcome back. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, and this is Sports 101, the show that discusses sports beyond the X's and O's and gives knowledge of the game. Here at Sport 101, we talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, looking at sport through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Again, make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of SportsZone Chicago shows. You can follow Sports 101 and the rest of SportsZone Chicago's lineup on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at search SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found on the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon store. Again, moving forward in this week's episode, I would like you to meet the coaches that we've discussed before break. The final 4 coaches this year, again, are Dawn Staley and Adia Barnes. Let's talk about Coach Barnes first. Adia Shun Barnes is a head women's basketball coach for the University of Arizona. If you look at Coach Barnes' middle name, Oshun is a Yoruba deity in the or Orisha in the Ifa or Voodoo spiritual system. She is a goddess of fertility, sensuality, and growth. So that's good that Coach Barnes has an element of her history in her name. Coach Barnes played collegiately at the University of Arizona, and then she played 7 years of professional basketball in the WNBA with the Houston Comets, Seattle Storm, Minnesota Lynx, and Sacramento Monarchs. She also played internationally in Ukraine with Dynamo Kiev, and as well as serving as a TV color analyst for Seattle Storm's games. Currently, Coach Barnes is married to Salvo Coppa, a basketball coach who she met in Italy. Coach Barnes grew up in San Diego, California, and attended Mission Bay Senior High School in San Diego. She is the daughter of former NFL player Pete Barnes. So in Coach Barnes' career, she amassed over 1,000 blocks, the most ever recorded by a female high school basketball player. And that was 253 blocks ahead of second place, Chris Anger. So he led the men. And again, that shows you her prowess. This was also more special due to her height. At 5'11", she wasn't as tall as most Division I Power 5 post players, and she was kind of overlooked by a lot of people. The University of Arizona head coach, Joanne Vicini, and then she didn't really want her and didn't think she could play at the post due to her height. But after watching film of her, she gave her a scholarship because she saw the way she moved on the court. She enrolled at Arizona in 1995 and began a stellar collegiate career. While she was in college, again, to her lack of stature in the post, they began to call her Charles Barkley, or kind of give her, she plays like Baby Charles, and that came from a Sports Illustrated writer. In her freshman year, Coach Barnes earned Pac-10 Freshman of the Year, and she was the first player from Arizona to win such an award. In her sophomore season, Coach Barnes' team, she led her team to a WNIT bid where they won the championship, and she was named the tournament's most valuable player. As a junior, Coach Barnes helped the team to their first ever NCAA appearance, where they won their first game against Western Kentucky, then lost by 6 points to the second seed in their bracket, Georgia. She went on to set 22 individual records for the Lady Wildcats. Some of these records include career points and rebounds, and many of her records have still not been broken. She would go on to be the first women's player in Arizona to be drafted into the professional leagues. And although she was very successful as an undersized post in college, she knew she would not be able to continue that as a post player in the pros. So she decided to transform herself into a guard. When she first got to the WNBA, she signed with the now defunct Sacramento Monarchs, where she played in 29 games, earned a starting spot in 16 of those games. However, she was traded to Minnesota and then Cleveland, and she saw her playing time dwindle. Remember, this is someone changing positions on a professional level, so that's very hard to do in itself. She went overseas to work on her craft as a guard, and she decided to take a Dennis Rodman approach and become a defensive specialist. So she got back in the WNBA, and in 2002 was traded to the Seattle Storm, and they were picked to finish second to last in their division that year. Being teamed with great pros such as Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson, Storm coach Lynn Dunn wasn't looking for a scorer, so Barnes she completed her Rodman-esque transformation and concentrated on becoming a shutdown defender. Her efforts paid off, and she helped the team to make the playoffs in only their third year of existence. So they were thinking this team was going to be next to last or a bottom feeder, but look at she brought them in just 1 year. Again, we also talked about her time in Ukraine playing for Dynamo Kiev. Outside of Dynamo Kiev, she also played for several EuroLeague teams. She played for Priolo in Italy, Elitser Rompala in Israel, Napoli BK in Italy, UMMC in Russia, Mersin in Turkey, and Pozzuoli, also an Italian team. In October of 2010, Barnes was named Director of Player and Coach Development at the Seattle Storm Youth Academy. While towards her professional career was dwindling down, she got approached by her Arizona head coach, Joanne Bonvincini, to see if she was interested in coaching. At the time, she was still playing, and she turned down that opportunity. However, she worked a lot of camps and did things outside the season. Remember, women's sports is not paid on the same level as men's sports. So oftentimes when their season is over, they don't just relax and work out. They find different ways to make money. At first, it was going to Europe. Now sponsorships are starting to increase. So sponsorship deals, working camps, speaking engagements, a lot of things that these women engage in to offset their low salaries. So she was working these camps, and the new head coach at the University of Washington, Kevin McGruff, asked her in 2011 to consider coaching. After a few calls, he was able to persuade her, and she joined the Huskies as an assistant coach. After success there and improving that program, she was named the women's basketball head coach at the University of Arizona on April 4th of 2016. After a fairly rough start to her coaching career, Barnes has entered her third season with the Wildcats, was this year with high hopes. The team began the year 12-1, but struggled when it came to Pac-12 conference play. Again, with COVID and other things, a lot of teams experienced struggle in the middle of their seasons. After finishing the regular season with 17 wins, their most in the regular season since 2010 and 11, Arizona entered the conference tournament as a number 8 seed. They knocked off USC to begin Pac-12 tournament play, and they would finish the year 18-13 before being selected for the women's NIT tournament. The Lady Wildcats will make it to the women's NIT final, knocking off Northwestern, become the champions. And this was 2019, so I apologize for that era. It wasn't this year, it was 2019. This year, the Wildcats beat Indiana in the Elite Eight this past weekend to reach the school's first ever Final Four. And again, you can see Coach Barnes celebrating with the historic and process of cutting down the net. Now I would like to feature Coach Staley. And Coach Staley is, if you want to talk about Bill Belichick, she is the Bill Belichick of women's collegiate basketball. Dawn Staley is an American Basketball Hall of Fame player as well as coach. She is an Olympic 3-time gold medalist and was elected to carry the United States flag at the opening ceremony of the 2004 Summer Olympics. This is a great honor given to supposedly the most notable U.S. Olympian, and she was very proud to be bestowed this honor. And she really represented not only as a player and coach for the United States Olympic teams. Coach Staley, when we talk about her playing career, she was a point guard for the University of Virginia under head coach Debbie Ryan, and she won the gold medal at the 1996 Summer Olympics as a player, and she went on to play professionally in the American Basketball League, which was before the WNBA, as well as the WNBA. In 2011, Staley was voted in by fans as one of the top 15 players in WNBA history. She was also inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2012 and elected to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2013. While still an NBA player, again, to offset the financial shortage that the WNBA players had, she would, in the offseason, coach at Temple University. And she started doing this in 2000. So from 2000 to 2008 at Temple University in her hometown, she led the program to 6 NCAA tournaments, 3 regular season conference championships, and 4 conference tournament championships. Due to all this, and with her retiring on May 7th of 2008, she was named the head coach for the women's basketball team at the University of South Carolina. Over the next 6 seasons, Coach steadily improved her program's record every year and culminated by winning the SEC her first championship in 2013 and 14. In late 2014, her team achieved the program's first #1 ranking, making her the second individual to both play on and coach a #1 ranked team. Again, during her time at the University of Virginia, she was a #1 player on a #1 team, and that was replicated at the University of South Carolina, where she got her team to the #1 ranking. Staley has gone on to lead South Carolina to 5 SEC regular season championships, 5 SEC tournament championships, 6 Sweet 16s, and 2 Final Fours. On April 2nd, 2017, she guided the South Carolina Gamecocks to the program's first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship. And again, this week or Friday, she is vying for another shot, as well as Coach Barnes, at a national championship, as they both represent Black women in this year's Final Four. Moving into some final thoughts as I close out with you today. Again, looking at today's political climate, Black women athletes have been outspoken and taking the charge of racial as well as social injustice reform stronger than our male counterparts. These women have also been leaders in the HBCU movement by top prep athletes of men and women to return to the HBCU ranks. And again, hopefully with this likeness and image situation that's being mulled over by the NCAA, if the athletes are allowed to benefit financially off their likeness and image, more revenue will come in, and maybe some of these athletes will decide to choose a historically Black college and university by getting these funds. Deion Sanders, again, or Coach Prime at Jackson State, released a video in the past weeks with F-150s and said if the NCAA passes the rule that you can get paid off a likeness and image, he guarantees every offensive and defensive lineman will have a brand new F-150. So again, with innovative coaches knowing how to use this rule, if it is passed, hopefully they can use it to entice athletes to attend historically Black colleges and universities and bring more additional revenue through television programming to the institutions. If we look at the success not only of Deion Sanders' team, but the rest of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, their games have moved from ESPN3 to ESPN2, increasing the revenue of these teams. So hopefully this trend will continue once everyone begins to play in the fall, and we can still see these teams on ESPN getting a larger piece of the pie. These women, again, are criticized for lacking skills men cannot do on the court, i.e. dunking. The women's game is not the same as the men's. It's boring. The same comments you hear over and over again. Yet they're still the first in reformation, which shows character and true resolve of these athletes, because they are athletes, as well as agents of change in their local community. Being catalysts for the next generation of coaches, GMs, athletic directors, what will be the landscape of athletics for both Black men and women. It is up to us to decide through our current actions what that will be. So the Aubrey Butlers can come be a star soccer player or a cheerleader, as well as countless other young African American girls in this country who are now seeing their likeness on TV as players as well as coaches will decide to forego all these stereotypes and support sports more. Again, thank you for tuning in to Sports 101 with me this week. I am Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under the Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with this show as well as the other litany of SportsZone Chicago shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found on the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Again, thank you for this journey on Women's History Month with my show, Sports 101, and the various others of SportsZone Chicago. Again, this month was just dedicated solely to women's history and their contributions within the sport realm. And we thank all listeners for taking time to listen to these stories that we highlighted of these women that you may have never heard of before. So again, thank you for enjoying my show. We'll see you next week at our normal scheduled time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I look forward to bringing you another episode of Sports 101. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Compassion, noun. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. We're all born with it. It's in us. Don't believe me? When you hear a baby cry, something pulls at you. You want to ease that pain. You want to soothe that hurt. No one had to teach you that. It's called compassion, and it's in you. However, at some point you turned it off when it came to me. Me.
The cries of my soul have gone unheard, but today, you will hear me.
My heart has wailed a melody loud enough to shatter your ears and you ignored me. But this week, you will hear me.
This body has beat the drums of anguish, only to be silenced. But this month, you will hear me.
This year,
this decade,
this century,
I will be heard. And
you will be the one to hear me.
And when I am finally heard,
show compassion.
Show compassion.
Show compassion.
Remember, it's in you.